Hi, hello, how you doing? It's me, Strawberin0 back with another MandaloreGaming video. This time it's Pathways into Darkness review. This was suggested under my marathon reaction, and at first I was a little bit confused as to why you didn't request the other, because I know there are other marathon games, and I know that Mandalore actually reviewed them. But then I noticed in his playlist section on his channel that he actually has a playlist called the Bungie Rabbit Hole or something like that, and it goes Marathon, Pathway into Darkness, the 3 other marathon games. And now I'm starting to see the connection between Pathway into Darkness and Marathon, other than, of course, as we can already see, it's a first-person shooter and it's made by Bungie. God damn! Did they really make 2 separate first-person shooter franchises in an era where first-person shooters were not very known for their story, and they made 2 FPS franchises that did? That would be wild. I guess we'll have to play the video and see, and without further ado, let's do just that. Okay.
When I hear 90s dungeon crawler,
Again with that RPG music.
I usually think of Eye of the Beholder, or Dungeon Master, or of course Ultima Underworld. It also reminds me of a lot of adults worrying about Satan, so I wasn't playing a lot of these games until years later. Even still, I rarely see Pathways into Darkness brought up. It's pretty ambitious for a game that was only developed by 3 people. Wolfenstein 3D had only come out a year before this in 1992, and this would be a combination first-person shooter and dungeon crawler. Originally, it was going to be a sequel to the designer's previous game, Minotaur: The Labyrinths of Crete. Well, that didn't happen, and Pathways is now its own thing. As for its obscurity, well, this was a Mac-only game, and if you did jump the hoops to play it, the game would look like this. Saying the studio had enough developers to be called a team was generous. They're not
Man, what the fuck is with Bungie and putting their games on weird and obscure systems? Okay, this comparison is a little bit weak, but bear with me. I said in a previous video that I had a problem with Halo because it was made for a different Windows that I had. Obviously, everybody here who is above the age of 20 knows what Windows XP is. It was the definitive Windows for a lot of people before we moved on to Windows 7, then Windows 10, and now some are on Windows 11. I'm still on 10. I probably will stay here until I'm forced to move. Before that, I don't know if you guys remember how fucking hated Windows 8 was, because it had a terrible interface made for phones. It had this system of files, which was shit. Whatever, a lot of people did not like that. This happened before with Windows Vista. You had Windows XP, which was universally loved. Everybody was on that operating system for as long as they could. To the very last second it was supported, people were using it. And I bet a lot of people did past that because it was just so good. The direct upgrade / sequel to Windows XP was Windows Vista. And Vista, I don't know this, I don't know why. I don't know the story, but Vista was not this loved, and people were not willing to move over from XP to Vista. And yeah, I guess as a pull by Microsoft, they ported Halo 2 exclusively to Windows Vista. And that's why I had like some bootleg. I don't remember if somebody cracked it for XP or if I eventually downloaded Vista just to play Halo 2. But that was a very strange decision to make it for Vista and not for the vastly more popular XP, which I assume was a ploy to get them to upgrade to Vista. And yeah, the Marathon was also on some obscure ass system. Mac, obviously, this doesn't compare because Mac and Windows Vista are not that obscure at all. It's just that, you know, Windows users obviously are the majority of the like computer PC users, and like Mac and Linux and whatever else makes just a small percent of that marketplace. Yeah, that's just a tangent I wanted to went on because I fucking hate Windows Vista. It prevented me from playing Halo 2 to completion because it kept crashing at one point and I couldn't fix it.
You're not getting an Ultima Underworld interface. Fortunately, it now plays on Mac, Windows, and Linux thanks to an excellent Aleph 1 port. This is all thanks to the work of Workin Ooh, hope I don't have to say that again. Anyhow, this will make your game playable, but you'll really have to read up on the controls. Though if you're playing a dungeon crawler, that should already be on the itinerary. But for example, here the microphone button will open your inventory, so you'll need to read carefully binding everything upright. That leads to the actual manual and what this is all about. Spring 1994, the Pentagon. The American president is in a meeting being briefed by his staff. They're interrupted by a hologram from an alien race called the Yarrow. The alien diplomat informs them they have barely over a week to save the world. Its name is Ryu Toth, and it tries its best to break down the situation into Bill Clinton-friendly terms. It turns out the object that killed the dinosaurs remained intact after impact. It was buried thousands of feet underground, and after some millennia, it began to dream. The object is a member of a race so ancient that it was formed before the Milky Way was dust. This particular one, whose name no human throat will learn to pronounce, fought in a war that formed the Magellanic Clouds. It died there, though Ryu Toth specifies that it's more like it came as close to dying as it can. The dead gods dreaming had been warping reality beneath the surface of the planet, but over the past century the changes have begun appearing in the jungles above.
Man, I fucking love Bungie stories. Holy, they are so wild.
Including the sporadic appearance of a strange pyramid. The Elder God is awakening. There's only one hope now. The pyramid leads down into the earth near the god's body. The Yarrow have researched human technology and found that using a nuclear device at that depth will bury the god further and send it back to sleep. The Yarrow themselves are on the way, but it'll take them 2 years. When they arrive, they'll get rid of it properly. So Bill Clinton sends a Spec Ops team to kill God. This sentence alone sounds more like a Persona game. You played one of these.
Holy fuck, I wish there was a Persona game where you're literally fucking CIA and you get to nuke God beneath the ocean or something like that.
These commandos. Your parachute didn't deploy, most of your equipment is damaged, and your team is gone. All you can do is set off alone into the pyramid. This is where the game begins, and there's no telling what waits in there. Taking the first steps in and the pyramid doesn't look too eldritch. The game is completely silent, and there's a skeleton in the corner with a copy of Mein Kampf. It says it won't make good reading because I don't know German. Once again, gamers are thwarted by bad localization. So I'm gonna shelve that for now and talk about the graphics. The environments are pretty simplistic. Different levels can have different wall patterns, but sometimes the colors are just swapped around. But there are still some details like strange growths or pillars or bones and debris scattered around. There are some distinct areas, and there is some environmental storytelling to be found. By its nature, it still is mostly very repetitive, but corpses are very important in pathways, and they do make those hard to miss. The art they do for the characters is colorful, detailed, and stylish. And yes, these are characters. This especially goes for the monsters you encounter. They have a lot of personality to them, with some designs I haven't seen in another game, for better and worse. Even with a generic enemy like a slime, Pathways has its own unique spin on it, instead giving you ooze men with giant gaping maws in their chest. Like the environments, there are some recolors of these too, but they usually indicate having a new special ability or needing some new way to deal with them. The only things in the whatever territory are the lightning orbs. I don't remember what they're called, but they exclusively live in the labyrinth of shocking ball torture. And frankly, who gives a shit? Considering all the graphics in the game are credited to a single dude, it's pretty cool just how much there actually is. What you're fighting can be a strange mashup, but they're colorful and appealing. It is a dead god's dream, so who am I to question? As for the music, there is no music. No ambient sound here either.
That's weird.
You mainly hear things trying to murder you and the sound of you murdering them. It is the kind of thing you can just put your own music on for, but a lot of times you may not see an attack, but you will hear an attack. You might stop for a moment and take a break when suddenly a bone explodes out of the darkness like a John Wilkes Booth Marowak is lurking there waiting for you. The ambushes are near constant and the sound has aged poorly. It gets better later, but the beginning will involve a lot of those things squealing.
Why do they sound like a fucking chicken or something? What the hell? I guess they do have 2 legs and are bipedal. Behold, a man.
There are so many
That shit is so annoying. Oh my god.
headless. I thought this was the whole game at one point. It is weird going from just dead silence to pure chaos. It gets better later when you can drown them all out with your own gunfire, but in the beginning, it can drive you crazy.
I've got a bone to pick with you. I've got a bone to pick with you. I've got a bone to pick with you.
Is this some kind of troll? There's no fucking way that sound effect is in the game. Is Mandalore
There's really
just
only one
trolling?
sound effect of note, which is
Trolling?
the sound the
What
Elder
the
God
fuck?
makes if you fail your mission and can't kill it in time. I think I've heard it before, but I'm not sure where. It's mainly a bad, compression-filled nightmare. I do like the sound of those exploding. So here's how you play it. As far as dungeon crawlers go, item management isn't too crazy here. Most of your equipment was damaged, but you have a few things starting out. Thankfully, you do have a map and pathways. It's an auto map that fills out where you've been, and even marks important locations like exits and corpses. This by itself saves a lot of headaches, though there are levels where it can reset to throw you off. Though these areas aren't the most convoluted ones, so it's fine. If you're paying attention, it might even show you where a false wall is, though it doesn't always do this. Still, many of these games gave you no map. You've also got your trusty watch since the entire game is timed. The manual says the nuke should be detonated before 2 PM on Friday the 13th, though strangely, the god doesn't actually awaken until a little bit after 6 PM. It's progressing in real time too, so you have a little bit over 5 actual days to do this. The catch is that you heal by resting, and when you rest, that'll speed things up. So you can take the watch off to not always have the clock staring at you, but it's always ticking down. Your flashlight will last the whole journey, but there are some times when you don't want to use it,
interesting.
and you will miss that visibility. Finally, you have your canvas bag. This is where some people can be thrown off. See, in the vanilla game, the weight of all of your items was tracked in the UI. So based on this and some other containers you find, you would think you have to do some item juggling. Well, the Aleph 1 port doesn't track weight at all because the weight is meaningless. There may be a bag of holding, but the points don't matter and never did. This may have been something more at one point, but was likely cut in development. They probably realized that deciding what items to keep from Afum Ja's increasingly cryptic garage sale wasn't worth that extra layer of torture. Knowing how to use a container is important for beating the game, but really you can grab everything you see. And you should. Finding treasures and special items increases your maximum health. It won't heal you right on pickup, but after a good sleep you'll survive some more assassination attempts. As for the weapons, there are a few to find, but ammo is frequently scarce. Along with Hitler's live journal, one of the first items you find in the game is a Walther P4. Using Nazi technology is a long military tradition here, so of course you grab that. However, you're not familiar with any of the weapons you come across. But the more you use a weapon, the more experience you gain at it, which translates to dumping out more damage. This is about as far as actual RPG mechanics go. There are wearable items like rings that can buff you or maybe hurt you, but you're not rotating through new armor or equipment like that. You can experiment to figure some things out, but a lot of it remains cryptic. At one point I found an equipable gas mask and I had no clue what it did. After beating the game I looked up the official hint guide, which was also vague, and it turned out it's supposed to protect me from something I would not have guessed, and apparently it doesn't always work for everyone for reasons unknown. Oh right, there is spellcasting. Yeah, see, he's frozen forever. Magic mainly acts as your secondary weapon. Mainly elemental effects like freezing, lightning, or fire. You gain a new spell by finding and equipping an appropriate crystal. As you'd expect, there's still an element of mystery here. When you cast a spell, the crystal recharges through methods unknown. It'll then recharge slightly slower after each use. Eventually the crystal will shatter, and that is the end of that spell for the rest of the game. The crystals don't have the same number of uses either. What ramps up the paranoia here is that there are some enemies that are immune to conventional weapons. So instead of obliterating every skeleton on sight, you have to be more selective. This idea makes sense by itself, but Pathways is a mishmash when it comes to combat and resources. For one, this is a very slow-moving game. The Aleph 1 version does support mouse look, but it's even more hypersensitive here than some other games.
Man, Bungie was smoking some of that good Zaza. That fucking drenched in something Zaza. Maybe even they partook in some of that gas station weed. Their early games before Halo are so fucking weird, man. This doesn't feel like a real game. That's
Some
so
titles get vastly
weird.
improved from mouse aim, but this isn't one of
How
those.
did...
Keyboard
I have no fucking idea why I never heard about any Bungie game re-Halo. I'm beginning to suspect that this is just a long con, like this is some kind of prank a Mandalore fucking pulled.
aiming is the way to go here, and it's not like you can look up and down anyways. You can bind some numpad keys for panning and some quick turn buttons in the center. Otherwise, you'll be turning a lot more quickly than the game thinks you should, and it'll be jittery and disorienting. It takes time getting used to this again, but it's perfectly fine. Fighting has a very deliberate rhythm to it. In the beginning, you're typically waiting for the enemy to make the attack, either dodging out of the way or blocking it off with an obstacle before going in for the kill. It sounds simple, and it is. The thing is, moving at the pace of a sloth with life alert really changes up how you interact with the game. You're not playing on your feet reacting to high-speed plays, you're reacting to a flying walrus slowly rolling around the corner. Dodging shots can only happen if you have room to do it, and frequently, you won't. More than anything, your positioning is the key to success. Checking for an escape is a constant, and you need to be wondering what will happen if an enemy comes around. This makes advancing down a long, barren hallway a death trap. If the enemy attacks first, you're near guaranteed to take some damage, but your guns do less damage at long range, which means spending more ammo. Not to mention this is one of those magical games where enemy attacks can come through solid corners.
Oh,
Come back to you
man.
again one day, Kane. Still, you can get
so
the enemy patterns
cheap.
figured out, and when you have room to move, you can start going through them with ease. At first, it seems like the difficulty is coming from the claustrophobic tight spaces, but as you get more resources and new enemies are introduced, the maps will begin to open up a little more, relying on distractions and surrounding you. You can see what they're trying to do, and sometimes it does gel together, but I'd mainly call it awkward, inconsistent, kind of shitty.
This gameplay does not look pleasant, is what I'm going to say.
Now there is a turning point where this becomes a lot more fun. Once again, this is mainly due to our old friend Kalashnikov. The issue is it's possible to miss out on AK Nirvana, and in fact,
I'm back, had to take a little bit of a break because my food arrived. In the meantime, I actually checked if those were actual real games by Bungie, because I for a second there I thought that fucking Mandalore is literally pranking me. And one important thing to note that Pathway into Darkness came before Marathon, so because he reviewed Marathon first, I think, before Pathway into Darkness. This got me a little bit fucked up, but yeah, so it's Pathway into Darkness, so this was even before Marathon, and then came the Marathon. That's why the game looks and feels way more bare bones, because if this game was developed after Marathon, I cannot imagine explaining like having no soundtrack, because Marathon actually has really fucking good soundtrack. So yeah, let's keep going and see.
it's possible to miss out on a lot of things. Some are fair expectations they expect you to investigate, others feel like failing a hidden test you didn't know you were taking. In other words, a 90s dungeon crawler. For example, playing the first few levels, you might swap between your pistol and your knife. Not playing wastefully, but using your pistol like a fly swatter if an enemy is in an awkward position. You feel like you're playing conservatively until you go up a ladder into the bone zone.
I've got a bone to pick with you.
You might think this is the test for saving ammo, but it's not this floor. The floor above it is the real test. In a simple layout, you face down hordes of enemies. I've encountered some silly clown cars spawning before, but this is starting to creep into serious Sam territory. I can't help but wonder how the sequence actually ran back in the day. It might have been fine, which could explain the simple level layout, but man, if you didn't stock up for this portion, you might have to go a few saves back. Speaking of which, saving is done on points, so no quick saving. It can be dangerously easy to miss an item you'll need to go back for later, or go back some saves because your current situation is wasted. This kind of thing is not uncommon at all for the genre. It's not the most egregious I've played, and I got through with relatively few headaches, but it's so easy to see where a player could have overlooked something. Like, was there someone out there who beat the game, who didn't find the box that magically prints you ammo? Who are you? What is your destiny? You can switch out types of ammo, and this makes all of them. I truly hope you're theoretical and not watching this. Living in a world where you can't obliterate the earthquake skeletons on sight isn't one I want to be a part of. Once they're locked onto, you're in for the shake and bake no matter how many walls you put between them. It never ends with them. I haven't even gotten to the story, the game is just so weird enough without it. I'm not sure what the Elder God is really...
Huh?
Who the fuck are you? I'm not sure what this is about, but I cannot pass him. If anyone asks, he ran at me with a weapon. Oh, this is perfect. No magic either. Well, oh my god. Oh, this is like a tag team kind of deal. You know what? He wins. I'm gonna take the hallway out.
No. What the fuck? What? Bro. What kind of fucking level design is that? What kind of enemy design is that? That's just a dude! That's just a dude sitting there! What?
One of the most important things you can do in figuring out how to progress is mastering the yellow crystal. Unlike the others, this one isn't for combat and it has unlimited uses. This special rock lets you communicate with the dead. As long as their head is soul attached anyways, I'm not sure how that works. Some corpses don't understand what's happening, and others are more caught up. They always respond to asking their name and how they died, but going from there you'll need to use more context clues. You only need to put in simple one-word responses, so asking about places, people, events, and objects allow you to dig further from there. This guess the word mechanic was in a lot of games from this era and could be incredibly convoluted. This isn't one of those, and it's actually very straightforward. You just need to keep asking about things brought up and sometimes go back to the beginning and find a new tangent. This is how most of the story is told in Pathways, and it opens up a lot of mystery. There are a lot of corpses to talk to, and some will outright lie to you. For example, the remnants of the Nazi expedition had some soldiers who didn't know what they were in for. They're confused, they're cooperative, or outright hate their commanding officer. Talking to said officer, he might try to get you killed. Even as a rotting bone pile, he might still have his own skeletons to hide. Putting together the deeper details of the story and what really happened will mean that you'll have to thoroughly interview a bunch of dead guys and then piece it all together. Beyond that, they can be more helpful on a surface level too. Yeah, sometimes they spit out try not to die hints, but they can also reveal where extra ammo or useful items are hidden, though most importantly, they point you in the direction of what you need to do next. The first German that you encountered in the game tells you that the expedition leader was named Muller. He tells you about how shitty Muller was, but also that the door next to him opened up after he played on a strange instrument. So now you know what to look for and what to do with it, rather than aimlessly wandering the halls shanking noodle people. You still need to do that, it's just no longer aimless. Levels can mix up the challenges, but these conversations will give you a load of insight. There can also be additional hints, like the map name itself being a clue. The game does make earnest attempts to help you out, but a lot of it still remains obtuse or possibly meaningless, so you can still end up stuck or lost or wanting to look up a guide. Pathways into Darkness can be incredibly dickish to you, but unlike some of its peers, it doesn't feel like it's actively trying to be this way. Again, if you're playing this kind of game, you know the kind of pain to expect. Operating inside of that madhouse scale, this one is pretty generous. That said, there are moments like the level where you need thermal goggles to see invisible enemies, which then make regularly visible enemies invisible. Times where you need to take poison, areas that drain all your ammo out, whatever the hell is happening in the cursed IED tomb. But beyond those specifics, you're mainly kept concerned by the unknown. If you rest in a bad area, an enemy can ambush you. I mean, resting itself is something I kept avoiding. Any healing items I have I might need later. How much time will I need, and how far down do these pathways actually go? It does a good job keeping you anxious for what's next, making you stay on your toes and carefully manage your resources. The actual balance is all over the place, and starting out you'll still probably die a lot. Looking back after having beaten the game, it's not as cruel as I expected. It's just that the start of the game is the hardest part to get through. You've got to be careful, but you can figure it out.
I think those types of games are really disappointing down the line, where the hardest part is the beginning. If you painstakingly go through a hard beginning to a game and the rest of the game is much easier than that, then you feel like you wasted your effort because at least you were, you know, in for the challenge or whatever. I hate difficulty spikes that are not like, especially near the beginning of the game.
That leaves us with the details of the story. If you don't want spoilers, go to here.
I'm never going to touch this game for sure.
So we start in 1938. A Nazi military expedition was sent to the pyramid because they're always looking for occult objects to give them an advantage. What they were told they were looking for and what they were actually looking for are pretty different, assuming the grunts even knew a fake reason. Those who thought they were in the loop believed it was a treasure hunt. They were looking for artifacts and gold, which are here to be fair. But after enough info gathering, you find he was looking for a box and a vial of immense power. The vial contains the essence of a demon that will help the Nazis win the upcoming war. How it's supposed to do this isn't clear. However, the small cedar box has much more obvious power to it. Any object placed inside is duplicated after a few minutes. That could be a game changer, but it does tie into the gold somehow. Muller orders one of his soldiers to find the gold. Because the box can duplicate anything, you should only need 1 ingot, which is exactly what Muller says, but he's also adamant they'll need 12 to do something. It seems like it had a purpose beyond just finding loot, but what that could be, I have no idea. Gameplay-wise, you do get a ton of health from it, but the game is basically over at this point. I can only guess was needed for some kind of puzzle that got cut, maybe involving the bag of holding. Lugging around a Minecraft amount of gold sounds like something that would make a weight system matter, so just add it to the pile of Nazi gold mysteries. Confronting Muller on what you know is no good since he
Damn.
can't stop lying. What he actually knew you have to put together from what the other characters tell you. Muller is clearly incompetent, but knows a startling amount about how the pyramid functions. He knows exactly where a strange SCP object is buried, how to get it, and there is no trace of any other human entering the pyramid before. To top it off, they mention another expedition coming through, and you later find out that it was decades later. These guys were a lot more local than Germans, possibly Cuban. When you talk to one of them, he reveals he got the information from his friend's grandfather. So the Germans had more intimate knowledge of the Yucatan Pyramid than even the locals did. There are also the instruments that open doorways, and they're called the alien pipes. Muller already had one that he brought from Germany. So Nazi High Command has intimate knowledge of the pyramid and an object that lets them break into it. They know exactly what they're looking for because they believe it'll make them win the war. So the question is, how do they know all this? It is possible they had passed down knowledge or some lone wolf came to them with it. At the same time, there's definitely a group that knows way more, and they briefed us on the mission. The Soviet Union had just collapsed, and in military technology, the United States was leading the way. But in 1938, the Yarrow might have thought the Nazis would be a good candidate for entering the pyramid. But now the Elder God is waking up in a week, and they've been silent about it for 60 years then. Was a week's notice really the best they could do? If they told the Germans, did they want them to have the vial in the box? Or maybe they farmed dead Elder Gods for the objects created through their delusions. Maybe there's a reason the Yarrow don't want to go into the pyramid. You could have been briefed on finer details, but you don't remember what your squad mates look like. Some are insulted, but maybe you hit your head really hard in the crash. Either way, there's something that doesn't add up about everything. Oh yeah, there's also the Nazi who said it was 12 days ago. Or maybe hundreds. 16 Sundays. He's been counting, and don't worry about his name. He also won't tell him your name. You know him, he who rises with the tides, master of all things small and insignificant. No, not tides like that, it'll all make sense. This guy's not dead anyhow. He'll catch up with you soon. Pretty straightforward, I think.
What the fuck?
Your squad mates are a lot more happy to see you. They don't have any deeper insight for you into what's happening, but they help you progress through the mission. For one, you have to find out where the nuke is, and in an ancient DRM method, the code to detonate it is inside of the manual. However, by talking to your squad mates, you also find out that part of the number has changed. You can also find out who has a radio beacon to call for extraction when the mission is done. The game can end in several different variations. If you don't have a beacon, you can still escape on foot, but it'll take some hours. The bomb itself can only be set for a max 48-hour timer. So you can complete the mission and die in a few ways, forget to set the nuke, or the Elder God wakes up. Again, it's more stuff people might forget about on the way down. Or they don't have the new arming code. Either way, you're gonna be the only possible survivor. Your other buddies were picked off on the way down, and the rest were murdered by a bizarre-looking monster. The enemy variety you face is really strange. Besides the monsters, there are all kinds of flavors of undead. Most appear to be humans, but the phantoms are odd. The Germans can call them ghosts or phantasms, but Muller specifically calls them shades. That's a more specific ancient Greek term for an underworld spirit. While some manifestations are based on humans in the world we know, others clearly are not since this god has been around. They get deadlier the deeper you go, and before you get to the detonation site, you can speak to a Cuban explorer. In a mirror story, they were also seeking the demon vial, being told it had great power. Unfortunately, one of them opened the vial and the demon escaped. Well, shit. Interestingly, the old man who had eavesdropped on the Germans calls it a being over a demon. Now, this could be tomatoes and tomatoes, but that's a very different connotation. When you do face the demon down, you have to go through rooms and rooms of monsters. You can't harm it, but it also can't directly attack you. So your final battle isn't even directly against the Elder God, which isn't aware of you or actively even trying to fight you. It's whatever this shady bottle genie is. This is the part where I especially wonder how someone beats the game without the cedar box. You face a swarm of every enemy you've encountered, but after that it only takes one hit to banish the dude. Yeah, that weird electric beep is the sound it makes. It leaves behind an alien gemstone, which is the only way to open up the door back upstairs. It also drains your health, so unless you picked up a special box on the way down to store it in, you're still out of luck. After that, you can arm and leave the nuke, a copy of Mein Kampf if you want, and once you escape, you're good to go.
What a
You
weird
get your score and not
fucking
much
game.
of a debriefing. So, did the Elder God create the demon vial? Could an eldritch being like that seed new life on accident? Its main power seems to be that it's able to control the god's creations. Does it understand Shim? Having limited control or even understanding of a god's powers could be huge. That does give a good practical reason for seeking out the vial, and could explain why the Yarrow would want it. But how feasible could that idea be? Well, there was mention of someone who had weird and frightening monsters under their control. You know, on the Illuminati terminal. And Marathon. Welcome, friends. Welcome to Hell. It's one of Bungie's first games, and it's still a loose prequel to Marathon. Destiny's reveal trailer was called Pathways Out of Darkness. This now obscure dungeon crawler has remained very important to a select few. So how does this tie into Marathon? Well, for one, the Yarrow will become very significant. The being that's buried in the earth will also make more sense. It also establishes beyond speculation that in the setting there are elites who have made contact with aliens, or at least aware of them. The fact the plan involved going to Tau Ceti specifically, and that Durandal was even looking for aliens to contact, might not have been so random. Some of the pyramid's creatures have strange similarities to the Svit, but the Svit are mostly cybernetics now, so what happened in their history? It could be their visual designs Bungie liked, or maybe there was something more. As for the player who escaped a reality-bending pyramid with a bunch of valuable SCP objects, it's not likely the government would ever allow that body to be properly buried. Those with a special interest might have had it preserved for study, and in the far future, having you back alive at Tau Ceti just in case would make sense. Going in alone with a pistol against impossible odds and an alien threat did feel oddly familiar to you, but you can't quite remember it. Maybe you did become the cyborg, but then, where are the Yarrow? Pathways at
That's a crazy way to tie it all together. Holy shit. Now I really want to know if this is just Mandalore speculating of it, or if it does really tie up like that in Marathon.
Itself leaves a lot
Holy,
unanswered,
this
but
is,
some future
this
games might
is
be more
quite the
enlightening.
rabbit
It's
hole.
just another page in this House of Leaves asylum. As for recommendations, it's free, not too brutal, and not having too much inventory to manage could be appealing. It is great to see how much an FPS could be even this early on, but a lot of the good gameplay ideas it has were expanded on, and a lot of them not too late after this game came out. You could point to any gameplay element and someone else has done it better. Some of them being done not too long after Marathon came out, and some of them being done by Bungie themselves. When similar things came after, I think I was repeating myself a little. The actual
Yeah, this is literally the line he used in Marathon. That's interesting. Okay, I now know why he reviewed Marathon first and Pathway into Darkness second.
premise and idea of this game is awesome. It's the kind of game that's in prime remake or successor material. The combined mechanics of shooting,
True,
adventuring, and talking to the
kinda
dead is
true.
really unique, and it absolutely could be done so much better nowadays. It also just goes to show how much just a little bit of interesting writing can elevate a game. This easily could have been you have to go blow up a haunted pyramid, and mechanically it would remain largely the same. By having a premise that's interesting and strange, it completely changes the tone of the game. Sure, the monsters are glorified Halloween decorations by today's standards, but it's nice to have something more underneath it all. It's a neat little game. I'll see you next time.
Okay, I am deep into the Bungie rabbit hole now. Now I have to see all of his other videos on the topic. But let's see what Mandalore
1,
has
2, or
has to say. Oh, definitely 2 for me. 3 is the worst one out of the original 3, in my humble opinion.
Definitely 2. I also know that 4 doesn't have the best reputation, and I don't think I finished it the first time I played it. I was able to go through it recently, and there is good stuff in there. What pulled me down the Warhammer rabbit hole? One of my friends in school, she had a brother who was really into the tabletop game, so that was my first exposure into
Yeah, I saw that Mandalore has a lot of videos about Warhammer video games, which I have to check out sooner or later too.
it, and then Dawn of War came out, and that sealed it. What is my most unpleasant video game experience? Thinking of a singular moment, what comes to mind is the game Ring. A guy starts talking at you while music keeps looping, and it feels like you're going crazy. It is hard to describe, but I might elaborate on it more one day. Did I learn any skills from the Boy Scouts that I still use? I did have a job where some rope skills came in handy, but nowadays, I can't remember how to even do a square knot. I think out of anything, just having Eagle Scout written down helped with a lot of applications for stuff. Like, one early job outright told me that was why I got it. Other than that, I mainly remember the trips over any lessons. Thoughts on Sins of a Solar Empire? More on that hopefully this year or early next. I still need to get to Arcanum and Deserts of Carrick. I've got an outline somewhere. Have I ever worked retail? My voice sounds too jaded to not have. Man, yeah. I feel like I've said this before, but some countries have mandatory military service. A period of mandatory food or retail service would probably improve things for the better. The wages are generally a little better now, but interacting with customers will dramatically change how you interact with those places. Okay, I'll see you next time.
I've got a bone to pick with you.
That last thing was really fucking true. I have not worked retail myself, but I know how they have it because I heard a lot of stories from certain YouTubers that used to work retail, and I approach, like, I have I want to believe I have a little bit more understanding and empathy for like a usual retail worker. Like obviously, if you're a prankster who goes around and does pranks in shops, you deserve to be hanged or just put against the wall and shot, because man, they don't earn, nobody earns good enough wages to put up with that shit, and retail workers definitely don't earn enough to put up with that shit. Like holy goddamn, prank channels and prank culture really made me feel bad for retail workers, and now like I said, I try to be as understanding as I always can if something happens in a shop or whatever. So yeah, Pathway into Darkness. Again, like Mandalore said, it's a really good idea. It's a really cool idea with some very choppy execution, it seems. And boy oh boy, that Bungie rabbit hole got me hooked. Like, the fact that trailer for fucking Destiny called back to their first game, that's crazy that they still have devs who remember those days, you know. But anyway, we'll continue this journey in my next Mandalore reaction, because now I just have to go through all of it and see like what's on the other side myself, because I'm very fucking interested. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you, as always, in the next one.